Hello everyone, welcome into another environment design tutorial. Today we're going to be taking some of the ideas and the concepts that we talked about in the previous video where I did a little walkthrough of Resident Evil 7 in the basement area, and we're going to be taking some of those concepts and ideas and creating our own environment. We're going to create this little hallway area, and I'm going to be using the assets from the horror basement environment that I created a couple of months ago. If you want to check out how to get access to that, I do sell that on Fab. I'll leave a link to that below. So I know this is going to be a really long video, but I didn't really want to cut anything out, and I wanted to just leave everything in, or just about everything in, just to give you guys a full picture of how I create an environment like this and how much work and time does go into creating an environment like this. So, if you want to skip parts, that's totally fine. If you want to put it on 2x and run through it really fast, that's totally fine as well. I just wanted to do as much as I can to show you how I go about creating an environment like this. If you do want to support me even further, you can check out the Patreon that I have, where you can get early access to these videos as well as other assets and some great perks that I offer there. And it's just a great way to support me as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the actual tutorial. All right, so before we get into creating our actual environment, I just wanted to open up the project with all of the assets that we're going to be using. This is the horror basement environment that I created, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about kind of the inspiration for this, talk a little bit about how I gathered reference and the things that I was looking for and the goals that I wanted to achieve with this. So I guess before we even get into this, let's talk a little bit about how I gathered the reference. So in the last video, I did kind of a little bit of a walkthrough of Resident Evil 7, which this was kind of heavily inspired by. And these are some of the images that I took from Resident Evil 7 and that I used for the inspiration for this. So, it's just a lot of me going through the environment and just taking photos of things that I find interesting, especially like, little props and things that are in the corners, laying on the floor. Props like these pieces of wood, trash bags, just anything that I can get an idea of what would fill this environment. And then also just kind of like the overall feel and color tone to everything, which, is obviously very dark, gray, very moody in these environments. Here I was just taking some pictures of these brackets here because it's just one of those things that I like to really try to be as detailed as possible. And I never just like to see, just loose pipes like this. I try to always think about how it would be in real life. And especially with these plastic pipes, you're probably going to have something kind of holding them or anchoring them to the wall. So yeah, that's just a little bit about Resident Evil 7 specific that I was looking at. And then these are just various photos from ArtStation, Google, basically wherever I could find it. Usually I just start on Google and just start, looking up creepy basement, horror basement, scary basement, underground basement. I guess that's kind of redundant, but anyway, things like that. And there's no real rhyme or reason to this. I'm really just anything that I see that I like the look of and I like the feel of, I'm just bringing in here. And once you do that, then you kind of start to get a feel of what you might want to use, some elements that you might want to use. I really liked this because I feel like it kind of it added like a certain level of mystery and kind of intrigue to it. This was kind of one of the reasons that I wanted to create like this little caged in area. And let's see, kind of the same thing here. This is not really like showing a caged in area, but especially just like with the way you have this kind of silhouetted figure here and he's turned around. There's just like this kind of scary mystery feeling to it that I wanted to kind of recreate. Looking at textures and things like that for the walls. Again, just like textures and just overall feel and mood for the environment. So these are most of, well, pretty much everything that I use for the reference. And then, again, PureRef is so great. I love this program. You can use it to take notes on. So these are just some kind of descriptive words that I took note of when I was playing through Resident Evil 7, and kind of some words that I wanted my environment to feel. And then I even just did, like, this is very, very rough, but just a super quick sketch here of kind of the overall floor plan, I guess, of what I wanted it to look like. So, I wanted it to be pretty long and have this area that was like this little caged in area, little couch living area here with a TV. These are the stairs. I probably should have, actually like labeled these things or something. But again, this was very rough and I knew what I wanted in my head. Now, if you're working with a team, it's probably a much better idea to make this a little bit more detailed, or you might even be working from like, concept art, or somebody else might be doing this and bringing it to you. But for just a solo project, I knew roughly what I wanted. And so I just wanted to kind of get this down and show roughly what I wanted it to look like. All right, so for our environment that we're going to create this time, I thought we would maybe do something kind of just like this hallway here. I don't want this video to get too long, so I'm going to just focus on kind of like a single point of reference or a single point of view here. And I thought it would be nice to do something that feels really cramped and, still give us like that creepy Resident Evil basement feeling, but make something completely from scratch with these assets that we have available here. So mainly I'm going to kind of go for this perspective, but, you can, of course, apply these thoughts and methods to your game and your environment and make whatever you want to. So let's move that off to the side, and we will go ahead and get started. So let's just create a new folder here. Under my content, I'm just going to create a brand new folder called 01 My Content. And then within that, we're just going to create another folder called Maps. And then we'll create a new level here. And we'll call this our horror hallway. All right, and so we'll open that up, and this is obviously completely blank. We're not going to worry about adding any directional light, skylight, anything like that, because we are creating this environment that is going to be completely closed off to a directional light, so there's really no point in having this. This is also not going to be a super in-depth video talking about lighting. I will light this scene, but we won't go super in-depth into that. I am working on and making a much more in-depth lighting video. There's a lot to lighting, like crazy amount. I mean, there are people that devote their entire lives to learning how to light things in a game engine. So just keep that in mind as we get into that. There's a lot to it. So I'm going to keep it pretty basic in here, but I will be going much more in depth into it in a future video. So just stay tuned for that. But let's go ahead and go to our meshes in our horror basement. And let's just kind of look and see what we have to work with. So we have a floor here. I usually start with a floor. And this is totally optional, but I always just like to zero out my location here so that we start at 0, 0, 0. I don't even know why. It's just a personal preference. And then what I usually start doing is just kind of building this out. I'll just keep all of this on default for right now. So we've got snapping turned on 10 increments. So I can just hold Alt and then drag out, and then we can line these up really quickly. Okay. And I just want to get the very rough shape right now. So something like this, and then we're going to have another hallway or I guess the same hallway, but just kind of leading around a corner here. All right. So then let's go ahead and do our walls. Let's see. Okay, so grab this. And we will start right here. I'm going to go over to this side. And we're just going to do basically the same thing. By the way, I went into unlit mode. So up here, you can toggle this between lit and unlit. I usually use the shortcut, which is Alt-3 and Alt-4 to change between that. You can do Alt-2 to go into wireframe. We also have some other modes that we can go into. I won't really talk much about those right now, but mainly Alt-3 and Alt-4 are good for just kind of quickly switching between lit and unlit. Okay, and it looks like I actually messed this up just slightly here, so I'm just going to fix that just so we don't have any overlapping. All right. Now I'm just going to highlight all of these, and I've got two-sided materials turned on, so we can just drag these out like so, and then we'll just move this down. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and add a light in here. We're not going to get too much into kind of worrying about exactly how we want to light this scene at this point, but I do want to just have maybe one or two point lights in here so that we can actually just get an idea of how this is going to look when it is lit. Now, the first thing that you probably notice is, well, first of all, this looks way too bright, but we also have this kind of auto exposure going on, and we want to change that and have much more control over this. Now, something that I think is really important to kind of think about when you're designing environments and you're looking at the viewport here, you should really kind of think of this as a camera, like you're looking through the lens of a camera. And like any digital camera, you're going to be able to adjust the settings on that. And it's also important to keep in mind that when we're playing a game, we are looking through a camera and we're not using our eyes. I mean, we're using our eyes to see what we're seeing on the screen, but the way the camera in the game and a camera in real life is going to work is different from the way that our eyes work. Our eyes can see much, much more range in terms of like shadows and brightness versus a camera that does not have nearly as much dynamic range. So again, we're not going to get too much into that right now, but it is just kind of something to think about and keep in mind. And when it comes to lighting, again, I'm going to go way more in depth with this. But for right now, I'm just going to try to keep this kind of as basic as possible. But we are going to be using physically based lighting values for this. And I think it's more, or the more I do this, the more I want to start using physically based lighting because that's what most game studios are going to be using. And it also is just good because we can use real life numbers and real life values to look up things like how many lumens a light bulb, a standard 60-watt light bulb would have, or something like that. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry. Again, I'm going to make a video going much more into depth into lighting and best lighting practices in Unreal Engine. And we're going to be specifically talking about physically based lighting. Physically based lighting is just a fancy way of saying we're using lighting values that are found in the real world. I don't really know why Unreal Engine does not kind of default to the numbers that are like that. If anybody knows, let me know. I would be curious. But essentially what we want to do, well, before we even get into that, let's add a post-process volume and let's kind of get some values set up so that we can control things like this auto exposure and have a little bit more control over our scene. So I'm going to go in here and add a post-process volume, And this post-process volume, we can move this anywhere in the scene because we're going to set it up to where it will affect the entire level. The way to do that is to search for infinite extent unbound and check that box there. And now any of the settings that we change in here are going to affect the entire level and not just this volume here. All right, so what we want to look for here is under exposure. We want to check the exposure compensation here. And right now I'm just going to set this to 0. But you'll notice that we still have auto exposure going on. So like if I go to this darker area, it's going to get brighter. Now, the way or the reason that that is happening is because by default, they are using these what's called EV100. And EV is basically exposure value. And let me see if I can find it here. Okay. So you can you can read through this if you want. This stuff gets like way more complicated than you would think it would be. There's a lot more math that goes into calculating lighting than you would think. But again, we're not going to get too much into this right now. The main things that I want to look for are if we go down to exposure values. Whoops, I lost it. Where was it? Okay, exposure values for ISO 100. So just again, don't worry too much about this. Really, these numbers are what we're looking for here. So this is going to tell us that we have daylight conditions here. This is what the EV values would be on a bright sunny day with light sand or snow. This is going to be like really, really bright sunlight. We have outdoor natural light. We have outdoor artificial light. What I'm looking for, though, is right down here, indoor artificial light. And what we can see is we have things like galleries, ice shows, office work area, home interiors. So that's going to be a little bit more, I think, appropriate for what we're doing here. And you can see that that's going to range between 5 and 7. Now, I would say that it may even be a little bit darker, or at least more on the 5 side, because we're going to be in a basement. So that's going to be, you know, by normal or by default, a fairly low lit environment. So let's go back here. And if we check these two boxes, you can see right now we have a range. We have a range between -10 and 20. That is a huge range. So that's why if we go into this darker area, the scene gets brighter. And if we go like back over here, then it kind of gets a little darker. So essentially what we want to do is set these to be the same number. Now, if I just set these to be like 0 and 0, you'll notice that that doesn't look too bad, but we don't have the correct values here. Now, again, this may feel like a little weird because you're probably looking at this and you're like, well, that looks fine. Why not just leave it at that? Well, again, this is coming down to physically based lighting. And if we go to our lights, by default, the unit that they're using are candelas, but I like to change this to lumens. And the reason that I like to do that is because we can actually look up values for something like a light bulb. So if we look up like a 60-watt light bulb lumen, let's see. Okay, so you can see right here, a traditional 60-watt incandescent bulb emits around 800 lumens. So of course that can vary slightly, but that's kind of like a standard light bulb that you might have in your house. Of course, just about everything nowadays are LEDs. So, you know, you could look up, if you look at a light bulb in your house, you might have like a 8-watt LED light bulb. You could look that up as well. If we looked at like an 8-watt, let's say LED, So we can see here an 8 watts G 8 watt is going to be 1080 lumens. So, somewhere between like 800 to 1000 lumens are probably going to be kind of a standard value for that. So if we go and let's set that to, let's try 800. All right, so now this gets very bright, right? And let's set both of these to 800. Let's change that to lumens, set that to 800. All right, so this got bright, and that is because we don't have the correct EV values here. And if you remember back on our chart here, we have home interiors are between 5 to 7. As this is a basement, I think that is probably going to be closer to the 5. So let's just try and set these to 5 and see how that looks. Okay, so that honestly looks pretty good. Now, again, you might be thinking to yourself, why are you like looking up these values? Why don't you just like drop a light in there, set this to manual and then just change your exposure compensation and then just, put your lights on whatever. What does it matter? And to a degree, it doesn't matter, but it also can be very helpful when you're trying to create a really accurate and realistic scene to use real world values, because obviously if we're using real world values for something like a light, then that is going to look much more realistic than just trying to kind of guess and change a slider, right? Now, I do think there's still something to be said to kind of have a little bit of artistic interpretation. And, that's totally fine. You can, of course, change the brightness of your lights a little bit if you want, or lower them down a little bit. But just doing what we did right here, like, this looks really accurate to me in terms of what I would think this environment, this basement area would look like if we just dropped 2 kind of normal light bulbs in here. Now, the other thing that we can change in here is the temperature, and you can look those up as well. Those vary as well. So it really just kind of depends on what you are wanting to replicate. I think what we're going to be using in here, I've got some, let's see, lights. So we have these lights with these fluorescent bulbs on them, and those are typically going to be a little bit cooler than just like a standard light bulb. And by cooler, I mean like temperature-wise. So if we look at our light here, and if we change the temperature here, if I slide it over to the right and go down in values, then that gets much much warmer, much more towards the red side. And if I go up, then it gets much more cooler towards the blue side. And towards the blue side is going to be where we want to be with those type of lights. And again, if we look up fluorescent bulb temperature charts, let's just see here. What do we have? So we can see here that, let's see, fluorescent light is going to be between 4,500 and 6,500 Kelvin. So somewhere around, let's try maybe 5,500. That is going to be roughly the lighting that we're going to want, or the temperature that we're going to want. Now, to me, it looks a little warm, but I think that is because the actual textures are just, fairly gray. They might have a little bit of a yellowish tint to them. So, it's just one of those things that you can adjust. If we wanted to make that a little cooler, we can move it more towards like 6,500. I think that is pretty good. I think actually 6,500 is the default, yeah. Which is also kind of odd because I believe daylight is more like 5,500, or maybe even more like 4,500. I don't remember off the top of my head, but usually that's what like a standard light you would want it to be, would be daylight balanced. So I'm not sure why it's set to 6500 by default, but I don't know. Again, if anybody knows, let me know. I'm curious. All right, so I probably went way too in depth into lighting for right now, but I do want to just mention that. And again, stay tuned. I'm going to have a series of videos because it's going to be a lot, but we're going to do like a really deep dive into lighting, specifically for video games, because there's a lot of, well, to be honest, there's just a lot of bad info out there, and there's some good info, but a lot of times it only pertains to like rendering or cinematics and things like that. So I want to really kind of focus more on lighting for video games. All right. Anyway, let's move on. All right, so we have the lights that are in here. These are just what I call construction lights. This is not by any means the what the final lighting is necessarily going to look like, but I just want to get a couple of lights in here to give me a rough idea of how this feels when we are in lit mode. Okay, I still might switch back to unlit just to kind of see things a little bit better, but I like to have at least a couple in here, and I might even just add another one in here, right back here, because I really want to get, if we go back to our reference, so they have a light right here. I actually kind of like the idea of having a light back here because I think that that's going to give us a little bit more depth to the lighting and also just create that mystery and intrigue that I really like, to kind of give you that feeling of like, oh, what is around the corner, right? So that is what we will do there. All right. Now, if you've seen me create other environments, what I usually like to do, start with my kind of construction details, which are like the floor, the walls. I'm not going to put the ceiling in quite yet. I just want to get the basic shape. And then I like to start with the bigger details first, and then we kind of work our way down to the smaller details. So let's just take a look at what we have. And I think something like these shelves are kind of a nice big detail. I'm going to bring both of those out. And let's see what else. Maybe a couch. I don't even know if I'm going to use all of these things, but I just kind of want to see what I have to work with. And then we'll kind of go from there. All right, so let's see, maybe something like this. Let's actually just do this so we have a little bit more room. And we'll do this workbench here. And I think that's it. Maybe this table. Okay, so let's just work with that for right now. All right, so, no real rhyme or reason that I'm going to go about this, but I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to turn off the snapping here, because for this, I don't want things to look perfect. So I want to come in here and really just kind of just start putting things in the environment that I feel like would maybe be stacked in here. And the other thing that I want to go ahead and do is let's go ahead and kind of create a camera angle. So you can actually save camera angles by pressing Control and then one of the numbers. So like if I press Control 1, you can see that it says Save Bookmarked 1. And then if I move anywhere in the environment, if I just hit 1 now, it will snap back to that location. I can do something like go down here, hit Control 2, and now I can switch between these camera angles very quickly. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so let's just start moving around some stuff. I may even bring in these walls a little bit because I want it to feel really cramped. Whoops. Let me turn snapping back on for this. And I'm going to move it into, Let's go like right there. All right, and then this is just like a entertainment center, which I think is flipped around. So let's flip it around here. Turn snapping back off. And I feel like I'm going to want some of these shelves to be down here. Also, I'm going to bring in these walls. Let's go to about there. All right, so now again, I'm just kind of thinking about the big details, and I want to leave room for us to move and actually walk. So let's think about that as well. Okay. Let's add a couple of these shelves. Maybe we even do something like have one knocked over. I'm actually just going to reset the rotation for this, bring it down to about there. Then I'm going to pull it up to where it's above the ground, and I'm going to hit just the end key, and that will drop it down. As long as both meshes have collision, that'll drop it down until it hits collision. And then we'll just kind of do something like this. Now, the other thing that I didn't do, I normally would do this and recommend doing this. I don't think I have a mannequin in here. Yeah, I don't. I guess let's just go ahead and do that. So I would highly recommend you guys, when you're creating an environment, add a mannequin in here. So I'm just going to add the third person content. And the reason that we want to do this is so that we get the scale right for things. Now, I have created all of these assets myself, and I know that the scale is already correct on them. But if you didn't know that, it's good to just bring a mannequin in here, because that's going to be kind of like the average size of a person. And that's going to help us make sure that we're, don't have assets that are way too big or areas that are way too cramped or too open or things like that. So we can bring this in here and get a better feel of what it's going to feel like. All right, so I'm going to just keep putting some more assets in here and just scattering some things around. I want this to just feel very cramped, very kind of messy, thrown together. Maybe we even do something like lean this up against a wall. Don't think I really like that, actually. Let's just reset the rotation. I don't think we have enough room for this. I might still use that, but for right now, I'm just going to move that out of the way. Let's maybe bring this guy in over here. And I may just change my camera angle that I have right here. Maybe something more like, I don't know, like this. So Control 2. So now we have that one and that one. Okay. Oh, I kind of like this camera angle as well. Maybe I'll do Control 3 for that. All right, so we can obviously change this, but I think for right now, I'm happy with that. Not that, though. Okay, so yeah, I'm happy with that in terms of just the bigger details, at least. Um, yeah, I think that's good. I was thinking maybe we could put something else right here. I think that we will put some more stuff right here, but we'll have some smaller items there. All right, so let's look at what we have. Let's find kind of medium-sized details now. Let's see, maybe these boxes. And sometimes I also just like to maybe drag out a plane and just kind of set all of these out to the side so that we can just have access to them. So like that. These cans are really tiny. I'm going to save those. Maybe these cinder blocks. These are kind of small, but we will definitely use them. Let's see. Electrical boxes. Floor runner. Okay, so this is good. If you remember, or if you watched the last video, I was talking about how I don't typically like when, especially in an environment like this, when the walls just go straight down to the floor like this. I feel like there usually is some kind of additional piece of concrete or, wood or foundation or something that's down there. So I'm going to do that here. And we'll just go with something kind of like this. Let's change this to 5 and go with something like that, maybe. I think that's actually maybe a little too tall, so bring it down. And actually, I think I have some larger ones here. Let's see. Yeah, these are bigger, so let's use these. And what I want to do is actually just, let's just delete that. And let's reset that. That'll bring us back to the beginning here. That's fine. And I just want to move this over. That is another reason why I like to start at 0, 0, 0, because it just keeps everything nice and even on the grid. All right, so we'll go with something kind of like that. Maybe down one more. And then let's change this to like 100, because I think these are 400 each. And then I can just quickly drag these out to fill them out throughout the scene. Might need to adjust some of these assets if they're clipping. Okay, and then we will just hold Alt and drag this out here. And then I want to just flip this around because there is actually a slight bevel on one side. I guess I could have put it on both sides to make life a little bit easier, but I didn't. So I want to have that bevel on the side that is sticking out. Okay, so I think that is good there. Now we just need to add one more in here. And then we'll go on the corners here as well, or on this other side. Okay, and I'm not going to worry about going all the way to the end. Obviously, if you were making this for yourself, you would want to. But we're really just kind of going for that one camera angle there. Okay, now we have kind of a little bit of an issue here where we need something here. So in this case, I would probably just use like a pillar or something, which I don't think I actually have. So what we could do is, let's see. I do have these wooden beams that could work as something. But honestly, I think what I'm going to do is just use one of these. Just duplicate this and put it on the side here. And then I'm just going to scale this outward just slightly. Now, technically, this is kind of stretching the textures, but I don't think you're going to really notice it at all. So I think that's going to be fine. Okay. All right. Let's also go ahead and add a ceiling here. So I'm going to just duplicate the floors and move that up. Actually, you know what? Let's just do this. Just select all of this. Hold Alt and drag up. And then we'll get this. And then I want to do the same kind of border here on the ceiling. So we will just grab all of this. And just drag that up. Okay, now, again, I have the bevel only on that one side. So what I'm going to do to fix that is change the scaling on the Z to be -1. And then I just need to move that a little bit. And now that just flipped that for me. All right, so yeah, that already looks way better to me. That looks more realistic than just having this, this wall with this different texture just intersect with this ceiling that is a completely different texture as well. Looks like it was designed to be a little bit better like that. Okay, so let's continue on with smaller details. We were actually bringing those out, so let's keep looking and see what we have and bringing those out so that we can use them. This palette would be nice. That's actually probably more like a large detail that I really should have used. We've got various rugs. I probably won't use all of these, but maybe we have one in like this. Maybe like under this couch here. Just make this a little smaller. And I'm just going to pull this out here and just drop it down. And actually, I'm going to turn the snapping off just so I have more fine-tune control there. And doesn't really matter. Just kind of whatever you like the feel of, the look of. Be careful that you don't have things clipping. Even if you can't really see them, sometimes you will have people like me that play your game and look at environments way too close. So if you do have things clipping like that, even if you don't think people will notice them, then they may. But it's also okay. Something's behind a couch. You're probably not going to see it. Okay, so let's see what else we got. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and bring this palette in. We can find a place for it. Maybe we actually put it right there. We are getting pretty tight in here, but I think this would look good. Actually, let's move this all the way to where it's kind of leaning like on the wall here and then kind of on this piece here as well. Okay. All right, what else do we have? We've got some barrels. Those are nice. We'll do the pipes later. Old TV. I don't know if we have enough room for that. A table. You don't have to use everything. It's totally fine. Sometimes you can have too much stuff in your environment. So just keep that in mind. Maybe these trash bags too. Those I would say are kind of medium size. All right, we've got a few different ones, slightly different textures on some, just to give us some variety. All right, so let's actually just hide our ceiling here. I'm just going to create a new folder here. We'll just call it ceiling. And then I can just hide that kind of quickly there. And then I can kind of have this bird's eye view a little bit better. All right, so let's just kind of get an idea of what else we want to bring in here. I think maybe this barrel in the corner would look kind of cool. Seems like that would be something that would be in a corner. And I don't know, 2 barrels? I think that's too much. Maybe not. I think it might work just because it's going to be so dark. We'll go with it for right now. We may change it. Let me also just bring a light out here so I can see what we are working with. Let's work with these boxes. So I think we are going to have probably a lot of boxes in here. Because I'm just imagining that this would be, an area that maybe a family would use, that they just throw a bunch of stuff in here. So I'm going to first resize some of these to kind of fit in here a little bit better. And then we're just going to kind of start adding in boxes, trying to make this not feel too kind of generic looking, or, like we're not just copying and pasting, even though that is what we're doing, but we want it to feel more natural and look more lived in, I guess. Okay. So I'm just working with this one box for right now. And I want to just kind of spread that out in different areas. And then we'll grab that other box and fill in some other areas there. Maybe we have a couple on the couch. And we can also just size things a little different here as well. That helps give us a little bit more variety when we're using the same assets as over and over. Maybe we even make like some really small ones here. And you can totally do something kind of like this. So maybe we create like a little pile, And then we grab that pile again. And if you're kind of careful, you can kind of get away with using, kind of like stacks of um, assets like that. If you just rotate them in in different ways, and then you might want to come back and just change them a little bit. I think these are actually too small. Let's redo this. Okay, I think something like that looks a little bit more realistic. Okay. All right. And, now it just kind of comes down to just taking your time. And, this might be kind of boring for some people. Personally, what I usually end up doing is just turn on some music, maybe a podcast. There's not a lot of, you know, brain power that this really requires. It's just kind of taking the time to fill out the environment, placing assets wherever you like. And, the more you do, the kind of quicker you will get at this. Now, one other thing that we can do is we can scatter environments with physics. So this is kind of a fun thing to do. First of all, we need to, let's just take a look at this and make sure that the collision looks good for this. So let's see, if we turn on simple collision, we can see that this looks pretty good. If you have an asset, we may even want to change this to complex collision here. Yeah, let's do that. So let's remove the collision, and then we're going to look for collision complexity, change this to use complex collision as simple, and then we'll have much more accurate collision on here. But just know that this can be worse for performance, especially if you're doing it on a lot of different assets. But now what that will allow us to do is have much more accuracy when I simulate physics, and also when I drop things down by hitting the end key here, then that'll be much more accurate than that simple collision that we're using. But what we can do with simulating the physics here is we can get different objects like this. Typically, I would do this with smaller objects, but you could do it with these boxes as well. Maybe we even grab this one. Actually, you know what? Let's just do just these for right now. So maybe we have like a couple of stacks here. Okay. So I want to just create something like this, and then I'm going to select all of these. And we need to turn simulate physics on. So if I search for simulate, we want to check simulate physics. And then what I can do is if I just hit play here, All right, now one thing that I want to do is so I'm going to use these crates here, but I want to fill them up with stuff. And I want to do that. I want to go ahead and do that before I place them in here. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is I want to show you guys how to scatter objects with physics. So I'm going to grab a couple of the objects that I want to use, like these bottles, and I think there's also, yeah, these cans. And the important part with this is to make sure that all of your stuff has collision on it. So if we look at collision, you just want to make sure that you have collision on these objects, which we do. And then let's go ahead and turn that off, and see if there's anything else that I want to get. Let's see, maybe like this guy. Maybe some of these buttons or knobs here. And yeah, I think that's good for now. So what I want to do is, well, I'll just show you guys before we do too much here. But if I take these cans, for instance, and, normally if we were just to scatter these throughout the environment, it would take a long time for us to take them and, move them like this, and then maybe we drop them down, rotate them, get them exactly where we want, and then we have to do this with, 20, 50, 100 other assets like this, and that can take a very long time. So what we can actually do is allow the engine to simulate physics on these objects, and then it will drop them and make them kind of scatter much more naturally, right? So the way that you want to do that is select the objects that you want to drop and highlight all of them. Go over here to the details and search for simulate. Turn simulate physics on. And now we want to actually run the game, but we don't want to actually play. We want to just simulate. And you can do that by clicking on the little drop-down menu here and clicking on simulate. So now if I hit simulate, you'll see that that's going to drop those. But if I just hit stop, it's going to reset them. So there's a way that you can save that position, basically. If we hit play again to simulate, if I then let them kind of settle, and if I hit K, the K on the keyboard, like K for keyboard, you'll see that it says save the state of those. And now if I hit stop, it will actually save exactly where those scattered. And then we can go back in here and we can still move these around if we want to kind of, change the position of them and things like that. All right, so what I want to do is basically grab maybe like all of these, and I want to try and just kind of drop them in this crate and let them just scatter naturally. So I think what would probably work best is for us to line these up a little bit more. And what I find is it usually works to kind of try and flip things around a little bit. Okay, and I may, let's actually duplicate these cans as well so that we have more of them. Okay, so let's do something like that. And let's actually bring these up above because I want the cans to be kind of below all of this, except maybe these. Okay, and you really just kind of have to play around with this. It very likely will not work perfectly the first time. So we're just going to try this out and just see how it looks, and then we might go again. So I want to select everything that I want to simulate physics on. Okay. And then we're going to turn simulate physics on. And then we're going to simulate. Okay, now we lost one. Let's just hit stop. Let's try that again. So I think this one, maybe we'll bring this over here. Okay. All right, let's try that again. All right, so that's not bad, but I don't really like the way that those are falling. So let's just try and change the position a little bit. Okay, so make sure that we select everything again, because when we hit K to save those, we need to have them actually selected. So simulate. Okay, that looks pretty good. I still don't really like the way that those are falling. I just want to maybe try and do something a little bit more like this. Like I said, it's really just trial and error. But once we get this, then it'll be a lot quicker for us to spread these around. So let's try that again. Okay, that looks much better. All right, so now let's hit K, save those, then we can hit stop. Okay, and now we can turn simulate physics off because we don't need that anymore. And now we have kind of all of this scattered in a much more kind of believable fashion. Now, yeah, okay, that looks fine. You know, collision is not perfect on all of these, so like this is obviously kind of floating a little bit. That's just up to you how much extra effort you want to put into getting all of this perfect. For my purpose here, this is fine. But if you did want to, make this look a little bit better, you could, especially if it was going to be like, a horror game and you have a maybe a puzzle that you have a puzzle piece in here. Maybe you needed to find this or something. For this, you might want to kind of focus on that a little bit more. But for my purpose here, this is fine. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to select everything in here, and we're going to basically merge all of this together. So I've got everything selected, and I'm going to go up here to actor and merge actors. Okay, and then what I like to do is just create a folder for meshes, and then another folder called merged actors. And then I'm going to save my merged actor in there. And now I have just one asset that has all of those actors in it. So now I can take that and I can fill in our environments a little bit better. Now, obviously, if we use this too much, this is going to, become apparent that we are using the same asset over and over. So what you probably would want to do is maybe do that a few different times, create a few different variations for this. But just to kind of save time, I'm going to just use this one and just kind of spread it through some of these areas. Still trying to, change at least the rotation and things like that, just to give us a little bit more variation. Okay. Now, just looking at our camera angles again, I think that's looking good. Let's also add some of these over here. Maybe up high because you won't really be able to see exactly what's in them very well, but you will be able to see that they're full. And that'll kind of help give more of that cramped feeling to this environment that we want. Okay, maybe one more down here. Okay. That is looking pretty good. Let's see what else we have. Let's go ahead and grab this other box, and I'm going to just start filling it or using it to fill in more of the areas, just to give us a little bit more variation. And then maybe let's make like a stack of boxes over here too. Actually, what we could do, we could also simulate physics on this and maybe try and create like a little bit more natural looking stack. So maybe we have a couple of boxes like this and this other box kind of on top. Okay, so let's try this and see how this looks. Let's simulate physics. Okay, I mean, it's not really a lot to that, but it does kind of help. Maybe if we did, I don't know if we did something like this, if this would change much. Kind of, because it did kind of, twist this one a little bit. I think that's fine. Let's go ahead and hit K to save that, and then turn simulate physics off. I think I will just rotate this one a little bit more because the way that it rotated there looked a little bit too similar to this other one. So I am pretty happy with that. Might need to make these a little smaller. Something kind of like that. And just bring this down to where it looks like it's sitting on top of those a little bit better. Okay. And then let's maybe have some boxes over here. Let's do the same thing. Let's simulate and have them kind of drop on this. Make it look like they're kind of, they've just been thrown on here, stacked on here. And just giving a slight twist to vary them a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to just rotate them slightly like that. Because what I'm hoping will happen is they'll kind of slide this way a little bit. Let's see what happens. Okay, oops, I actually hit play instead of simulate, which does kind of work, but I like to use simulate instead. I think I want to have these a little closer to each other. And maybe we do kind of 3 rows here. Let's see how this looks. Okay. It looks okay. I think that all of these boxes look a little too similar, but I don't think it's too bad. What I might do is just rotate like this middle one here or something. let's go ahead and hit K. Actually, I don't know if that saved those. Let me just make sure. Okay, yeah, I think it did. Yeah. Okay, turn simulate off. And let me just try and see if I rotate maybe that one. Yeah, I think that's not bad. Maybe what we could also do is flip one of these around. Okay, now I'm going to try and make this a little bit more accurate. Just bring these down a little bit. If I was, if this was an actual game I was making, I would take a lot more time with this. But this video is already getting very long, so I want to just kind of do this quickly. But I think we're getting a good look here. I'm really liking just the cramped feel of this. We do still have kind of some open areas, but we still have some more assets that we can use. Let's see. Let's do maybe one box up here. Okay. And let's do some buckets. Add a couple of buckets in here. Haven't really put a lot or much of anything over there. Let me grab one of these. And maybe one more on the ground here. Maybe even two. Let's see if we do something kind of like this. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just delete our mannequin because I'm pretty comfortable with the scale on everything. Okay. This is looking good. So not really worrying too much about what it looks like back that way. Mainly just this way. You know what? What we might do is add another barrel over here. So I feel like it looks a little empty there. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. Let's see. Trash bags, maybe? Let's grab a couple of those. And I think it would look kind of cool to, if we could fit them in here, maybe have them kind of stuffed in between these shelves here. Might have to resize them a little bit. But something kind of like this. And then maybe, actually, let's bring this one over like this, and maybe we do something kind of like this. And then stack another one on top here. Oh, yeah. I'm liking that. All right. Now I'm just kind of looking at any areas that I feel like are empty over here. I feel like could use something. So let's bring a trash bag over there. And that's pretty good, actually. Make it just a little smaller. Something kind of like that. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm liking that. I feel like we need something up here and maybe a couple of things right here. Let's grab one of these boxes. Maybe drop this one on top here. Oops. And maybe one more down here. Okay. So I'm really just trying to kind of look at this and see if anything kind of feels like it's off balanced. You know, if there's like too much stuff over here, too many boxes over here versus over here. You know, we do have more boxes over here than we do here, but we have other things over here as well that I think are balancing it out. Balancing it out. Okay. Let's also just turn the ceiling back on just to kind of see how that feels as well. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I think let's move on to some of the smaller things now. So we have these cinder blocks, and let's get those cans again because I want to use those cans a lot. Let's see. Let's grab those. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to really start filling this in with a lot of smaller things like this. Let's just see. What else do we have? Maybe like some of those. Oh, don't mind my monitor. Just I have it set to get more red late at night, but I don't want that to come on while I'm recording. Oh, let's get these bottles in here too. All right, so now what I want to do is let's start with these cinder blocks. So I want to just start scattering these. And we honestly have filled this in pretty good. I may not even really do like a simulate physics on these. I'm just going to kind of scatter these manually in some areas that I feel like we could use them. And actually, you can kind of use these sometimes to cover up mistakes like this. So, you know, we could just move this, but I've already kind of got that set in place. So what I could do is just put a couple of cinder blocks in here to kind of hide that, hide my mistakes. Okay, and then again, as we make these little piles, I often will just copy and paste these, but just try to be careful that we just, you know, shift things around a little bit so they don't look too similar and too repetitive. All right, let's see. Let's maybe do some of these bottles now. So let's just grab all three of these. And let's start maybe stacking some of these on the shelves. So I'm going to grab all three of these and see what we can do here. Okay. And then we can just kind of duplicate some of these. Don't want to get too crazy because, we are pretty limited on the assets that we have. But I think it would look and be totally normal to have a bunch of different types of, or a bunch of the same jugs in an area like this. Just as long as we are careful that we don't make it look too repetitive. And then we might, do something like this too. Some stuff might have been knocked over. And to me, it's a lot of just trying to kind of balance things out, not to make something look um, too repetitive. Like already, I feel like this bottle looks like we have too many here. So I'm just going to delete one of those, I think. Um, and then, just looking like, oh, this looks like it's the same angle as that right there. So just try and move it to where it looks a little different. Okay, go back to our camera angles. I really think I'm liking more like this camera angle. I kind of like this actually. We're really cutting out the couch, but I really like this just cramped look here. I'm gonna just set that to 3, I think. Still keep those, but then have this third one that will probably just be my main one. All right, so I'm just gonna scatter these out a little bit more. And this is another, kind of like the boxes. No right or wrong way to do this, but want to just try and spread these around. Another thing that you can do that can be really helpful if you're limited on assets like this is to adjust the materials. Okay, I think that is good enough for right now. So let's go back to our reference. To be honest, I already like our scene better than this. I feel like we have made our scene have more stuff in it, which is what I wanted. Now, one thing that I do like about this that we don't have is this looks much more grimy and just kind of gross on the floors. But we can take care of that because we have some nice decals that we can work with. So if we take a look at, I've got a couple of kind of grunge detail or decals here. So we can bring these in. Let me see what this other one is. Yeah, I really like this one. So the way these decals work, or at least the way I usually use them, is I usually try to scale my box here to where it's very small on the z-axis anyway, and then just bring it down to where it starts affecting that. I kind of pull it just past it and then just bring it back up. Now, if you're noticing, like, you can see that it's showing up on some of the assets here. You can actually go in here, and if you search for decal, you have an option whether you want to show decals on that or not. And I think you can even edit this. Let me see, decal. Maybe not. Okay, so you have to do that within your scene here. But you can go through and, anything that is showing too much, or if you're having trouble with those showing on things where you don't want them, you can do that. So for these, I'm going to just kind of scale these and scatter them throughout the environment, just kind of rotating them around in different areas. Okay, so that is already looking pretty good. Okay, now the other thing that I do have for these floors, specifically for the floor materials, I have, I don't think, yeah, we need to change the materials here. So I'm not going to go into exactly how to create this just for time, but I can make another video on this. Essentially, we're going to use vertex painting. And this material, if I open this up, we have a layer specifically for puddles here. Okay, so the way that I have this set up right now, if we paint with the red channel and if we paint with black, then I can paint puddles in here like this. And then if I switch my mask to white, then I can erase. There's a lot of different settings in here that we can change, like the opacity, the roughness, fall off, all of those kind of things. Not going to get too much into that, but I can just kind of show you here what some of this does. So we can change the opacity here. We can also change the color, the roughness. Really, I'm just going to leave everything here because I kind of have it set the way that I like it. But I probably should just make a video on vertex painting because it's very useful and there is a lot that you can do with it, and really helps environments like this where we want, kind of this very grime, dark environment. All right, let's go back here and paint some in there. And obviously, this is going to show up better where you have lights. But yeah, I think this looks pretty good. Okay, so let's go out for now. And yeah, this is looking nice. I'm liking the way that this is coming out. All right, so I just had to take a little break because it was getting quite late. And so picking this back up on the next day. And we're going to finish this up. I think what I want to do is to go ahead and start putting in some pipes and things like that. Maybe along this wall, maybe some on the ceiling. And then figure out where we want to put our lights. I think we'll probably have a light just on the ceiling. I don't know. We'll see what it looks like, but I'm thinking a light kind of right here, and then maybe just two lights in this area. I definitely want to have a light over here, maybe even on the floor, like it's fallen down or something like that, and shining kind of bright this way to kind of lead us into that corner area there. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's look and see what we have for pipes. Let's see. So I'm not sure if I want to use these or I think I have a couple of different materials for these. So these are like a plastic material. Let's see. Or I have this metallic. Let me actually just copy this so we can kind of see what these look like. I think I want to use the metallic ones, but let's just see. I'm kind of thinking maybe we have some along the wall here. I guess we could do some of both of the different materials. Maybe we do the plastic ones along the wall, and then maybe we have some metallic ones kind of running along the ceiling. That might work well. Let's go with, I don't know how far back we want to go. Maybe like around there. And I'm going to just drag these out. For right now, let's just do like a straight line of them. But I think I want to at least have a couple of areas where we have like a T going, off to the side or something. And then, oh, what happens here? Looks like I missed that a little bit, so I'm just gonna fix that. And then I think we'll have 2 rows of these. Something kind of like that. Okay, and then what I want to do is put a 90-degree angle in here and just move them around that way. So I think that we have one of those. Let's see what this one looks like. Okay, and then if I want to just line this up easier, I'm just going to copy the location here and then paste that, and then I can drag these out a little bit easier. And, oh, there we go. Okay, and then what we'll need to do here is kind of offset these a little bit. So maybe just this one pipe here we'll bring in to about right there. To avoid the Z fighting there, we could do a couple of different things. We could just resize this pipe, but for our purposes here, I'll just move all of these back. That'll be fine. Okay. And then we'll just grab this one and bring it out. Same thing for this one. All right, and then we'll just duplicate these, and that's fine. I'm not going to see that area back there. And then we want to change the material on this as well. So just grab that material and place it in there. Okay. All right, now I think I'll go ahead and get a light up here. Let's see, where is it? I think I want it to be, this is kind of my main camera angle here, so I think I want to see it. We'll see how it looks though. But yeah, if we put it right there, we will see how this looks. Now, this material that I'm using, I believe, let me see. Yeah, we have an emissive intensity for it, so we can bring this up quite bright, and then we can kind of make that look like it's turned on, and then we'll either use a spotlight or a rect light for that. Okay, so I'm not going to worry too much about the way that looks right now. Just want to kind of get it in there. And then we're also going to need, or you don't need this, but I like to always have wires and things coming out for my lights to make it look like, there's actually something that is holding that or powering that. So we'll deal with that in a little bit. I have a spline that I've created that we can create some wires and things like that. The other thing that I want to do is let's grab another one of these and place it back here. And this doesn't have to be exact for right now. I just want to get it roughly in a position of where I want that secondary light to be, or really this is kind of going to be more like our main light because I want this to really draw the attention in. All right, now the next thing that I want to do is I want to have some pipes along this wall over here. And I think that we'll stick with the plastic material here just to kind of break things up. And I'm going to resize this as well. Let's see. Maybe like 2 times bigger. And one thing that I'm thinking about too is we've got this area right here. So I'm not sure how this is going to work. We might have to kind of make some different plans for this. Let me also just turn off our ceiling because it's kind of hard to see what we're doing here. Okay, that'll make things easier. So, yeah, I can't really get much closer. In fact, we're already clipping there. So what I'm thinking is if I do this, is this going to look weird that it's, being kind of this far away from the wall? And I don't really know quite yet. The other option would be to put it on the ceiling. I mean, we already have these on the ceiling, but it might not be too weird to have an additional pipe that is quite a bit different looking and also larger. Let's just see what our corner piece looks like here. If we scale this up 2 times. Okay, so I think that will work. I'm just going to move this back a little bit. By the way, a lot of times I do this where, like, if I select both of these, my pivot point is over here, or my gizmo is over here, and, I'm trying to line this up here, and it would be easier if my gizmo is right here, so I often just hold Control, click this, and then if I click it again, then it'll bring my pivot point to that mesh, and then make it a little bit easier there. Okay, so something like that. Let's turn our ceiling back on. Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to see. So we need to bring this down. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. Let's go ahead and just add another piece back here. Sometimes when you're in unlit, it can be a little harder to see, like to line things up. But yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now let's set this back to like 100. Then I'm just going to copy and paste a few of these. I think 3 is probably all we need. All right, so yeah, that looks pretty good. I like the way that looks. I do feel like our light fixture is kind of small. I'm going to just scale it up just a little bit. What was that, 1.25? Yeah, okay. Now, the other thing that I want to do with these pipes is I think I actually have it over here. Yeah, I've got this little wall clamp. So I'm going to use those just to try and make it feel a little bit more realistic. And so probably what I'll do is, let's just grab the location for this, copy that. Oh, where did that go? There it is. Paste that. And then we'll just kind of try and line this up a little bit better here. Okay, so that is a problem. That probably should have looked at that before I laid all of these out, but I need to move all of these up a little bit. Not a huge deal. Just select all of these really quick. Okay, and then I'm going to go back here where we can actually see this. Again, I'll just hold Control, deselect that, and then select that again. Then I can get my gizmo right here, and then I can move this up and make this look a little bit better. Okay. All right, now I think maybe the best way to do this would be to, whoops, copy one of these, put it over here, and then I'm going to select both of these, and I'll set this to something like maybe 500, and then I'll just duplicate them. I think that's too much, so I'm going to go back to 100, and whoops, maybe something kind of like that. I don't even want these to be perfectly aligned everywhere, so I may even come in here and just move a couple of them manually, kind of like this. Okay, and again, this is very subtle. A lot of people might not even notice those things, but it's just something that I like. And then let's keep going, bring them around on this side. And then I'll just put a couple more here. Okay, I think that is good. Then I want to put some on this one as well. So I'll just copy these. And because we scaled this up 2 times, I'm going to scale these twice as well. And then we'll put a few of these along the pipe as well. Maybe just something kind of like that. Okay. Looks good. Now let's bring in some wires, because I think that'll really help as well. So I have a spline here that we can use. If you have never worked with splines before, they are really cool, and they make it really useful for creating wires, and you can do a lot of things with them. A lot of people use them. A lot of times you use them for creating roads, rivers, paths, all kinds of things like that. There are a couple of examples I've gone over in the past in the bunker video that we made. I showed not really how to make one, but you can get one from the Quixel Megascans from Fab. But if you guys want me to, I can show you how to actually set up a blueprint to set those up. So essentially what they allow us to do is put a mesh in here, which I already have a mesh that is basically just this cable cord. And then I can drag out, and it will automatically um, size our cord for us. And then I can also add new sections in here. And then we can start bending them to do things like this. So basically what I want to do is just add a bunch of these in here to make it look like we're running some wire. And then we'll kind of plug them into our lights here. Okay, and then I'm gonna also run a few wires along this wall here. Not really any particular reason for this other than I just want to give um, just something else on this wall. So I'll probably create I don't know, 2 or 3 different ones, but just get some different shapes in here. And we might just run this kind of up into here just to kind of hide where it's going. Okay, and again, I'm not worrying too much about the origin points of these. Obviously, if you were making a game, you would want to, focus more on where these are coming from, but this is just more kind of a quick demonstration just to show how to make something like this. And then, again, as we duplicate these, I don't want them to be exactly the same, so I'm just going to move these around a little bit just to give us slightly different shapes. Maybe we even have like this kind of coming together, like we could actually grab one of these and use this to hold these together. Obviously needs to be much smaller. So something like this. I'm going to just kind of scale this down a little bit like this. Don't think anybody's going to notice that. Maybe even go a little smaller on these. Okay. And then I'll just put a few more of these along some of these paths to kind of make it look like they are being held by something. Actually, I think this area looks good. Let's just move some back here. Just trying to think about where it makes sense to actually have these. Okay. And, again, you could get crazy in here. I think it would look pretty cool just to have like a big mess of wires hanging off the ceiling and things like that. Just those kind of things just take time, obviously, but they are appreciated. So the next thing that I would recommend doing is once you've got your splines in here, I would merge all of these together. Because since these are blueprints and they're doing a lot of stuff in the construction script, it is taking up a little bit of resources. So we can merge these, merge, and actually for this, let's see. Let's go into merge actor settings. What I want to do is actually replace the source actors here. So now when I click on merge, these are all going to be just one single mesh now. Okay, and so that will be much more efficient than having those actual splines in the level. And oh, one other thing that I need to do is also add. Let's add a couple of these on this wire up here. So it looks like something is supporting that. And I think I'm going to make these even a little smaller. Okay, so I think we are good there. Now, before we kind of finish out the lighting, we are really close. I think the only other thing that I want to do is I want to just spread some more junk in the environment. And that'll be kind of fun because we'll do some more physics simulations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, I think I'm going to use just these cans. And what I want to do is I want to create like a little, let's actually do this. So I want to create like a little pack that I can pull from and use this over and over. So I'm going to just kind of move these around and try to rotate everything slightly. Do this a few times. Okay, to where we get something kind of like that, I guess. And then just to make things a little easier, I'm going to select all of these. By the way, you can hold Control and Alt, and then you can drag to select things like this. And then I'm going to add these to a folder. We'll call these cans. Okay, now I just have all of these to where I can grab these a little bit easier. And let's go ahead and also, well, let's duplicate these first because I just want to leave these alone. And then I'll drag these out to where we want to start dropping things. And then let's go ahead and find simulate physics. Okay, and now we'll just kind of start playing around with this. So let's go ahead and see what that does. Oops. Okay, and now it's just kind of, like just do this however much you want until you get the look that you want. Save the positions. Be sure to turn physics off. I think I'll delete that one, but this is exactly what I want. I just want these piles of trash and cans and things like that. And I can go back here, select these again. The only reason that I'm not choosing to simulate physics on those first is because when we actually simulate, I don't want them to fall down. So that's the only reason I'm doing that. And so, yeah, now it just is like, okay, wherever we kind of think that, some of these would pile up, definitely in corners. I think right here would be a good area. In fact, what we might do is make a bunch of these. And then if I Control Alt, select all of that. Now it's going to select this wall, but I can just Alt click that. Whoops, did I move that? Let's try that again. So let's select the wall first, and then I'm going to Control Alt, select all of those, then hold Control and just click. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right, so yeah, let's see how that does. Simulate. Okay. Yeah, that looks great. Press K to save all of those. And then we've got them saved. And we'll do a few more. Let's also turn the ceiling off. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate those, and then I'm going to get a few different piles here. Okay, so something like that. Control Alt, select all of that. Simulate physics. And then let's drag that in here. And let's drop some like around here. Now you got to be careful with this. If you start doing too many objects that you're simulating physics on, then you can really chug your machine and you might even crash the engine. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for. In fact, I might even want to have these a little bit more over here. That looks good. Okay. And then again, don't forget to go back and turn simulate physics off. Okay. So yeah, this is looking pretty good. Let's maybe get a few more objects. Maybe like we do some of these. Okay, don't really like that. Let's kind of twist these a little bit. Okay. K to save those. And then I'll do maybe one more. Grab all three of these. I might even grab this guy too. And let's actually make two selections here. I don't think I'm going to use those again, so I'm just going to literally just drag all of these here. Just do something like this. So let's see how this looks. Okay, I don't really like the way that that one landed. Let's try it one more time. I think that's good. All right. Okay. Stop. Turn simulate physics off. And yeah, that's good. Maybe this one feels a little repetitive. I'm just going to delete that one. Okay, I think that is good for me. Now, obviously, you can keep going with this. You can get as much junk and stuff as you want and drop it in here and play around. It's really just up to you how much time you want to spend on that, but I'm pretty happy with this now. Okay, guys, so I am pretty happy with the way that this is looking, but we still have one big thing to do, and that is to light our scene, because right now we're just using just these very basic lights. And while we do have pretty good values set up in terms of the intensity, and like the overall lighting is roughly where I want it to be, it's quite a ways from the actual feel and mood that I want it to be and the way I want it to look. Now, let's actually back up a little bit and let's talk a little bit about our post-process volume and some of the settings in there. And one of the things that I want to show you guys is I actually have lumen turned off. I turned that off a while ago, and there's multiple reasons for that, but I'm going to show you mainly why here. So I'm going to my main camera angle here, and we've got it set off, and I'm going to toggle it on, and I just want you to just look at the scene as we toggle it on. So here it is off, and if I turn it on, okay, and then off, and then on. So what are you noticing that is happening when I'm turning it on and off? So first of all, the thing that stands out to me is we get these lumen artifacts that everyone hates. And I feel like this is one of the most common questions I see is, how do you fix the glowing lights in your scene? Well, that's because we're using lumen. And you need to understand what lumen is in the first place. Lumen is a solution to provide global illumination, which is just bounce lighting. And it's doing that through software instead of hardware a lot of times. And so, if you've heard ray tracing, the term ray tracing, that can often be used for global illumination as well, but that is a hardware method, meaning that it's using your graphics card. And, if you don't have a really good graphics card, or if you have a lower end graphics card, then it's going to be much heavier in terms of performance. Hardware ray tracing in general is just very expensive. So Lumen tries to kind of give you similar results, but in a more efficient way. So it's basically software ray tracing. Now, it does a good job for what it does, but especially in a scene like this where we have a lot of dark colors and we have, things like browns and grays, there's not a lot of like white for light to bounce off of. So that's one of the reasons why you're not really noticing much difference here. And the other thing is it's still heavy on performance. So even though it's better than pure hardware ray tracing, if I set our quality to cinematic here, if you just kind of take a note at the FPS here, we are at 70-ish. And if I turn this off, we just instantly bump up to 120. And it's probably higher than 120. That's just where it's capped at right now. And that's at cinematic scalability. So in my opinion, there's just no real reason for us to use global illumination in this scene. There are scenes that it would make sense to use, and there are great things that you can do with global illumination, but there's also ways that you can fake that and still keep real-time lighting. So I'm going to show you how to do a couple of different things here to kind of fake that and get what we want. So the first thing is you can obviously see that we don't have a lot of, or we almost have no light in the shadows here. And there's a couple of things that we can do. I'm also just going to set this back to high for now. You can use something like a skylight to kind of add a little bit of fill light and kind of fake a little bit of global illumination. The other thing is we don't have any fog in our scene, so I want to go ahead and add some exponential height fog. Now, when we add that in, you're not going to notice any difference right away. It's because we need to change a few settings. So the first thing that I want to do is enable, where is it? Volumetric fog. And then if we scale our fog density up much higher, something like 1, you will go ahead and you'll notice that we start to see a little bit of fog in here now. Okay. So we could go even higher. We could go to something like 5. That's very high, right? But one thing that I want you to notice is it does almost kind of like give us a little bit of, it's not really bounce lighting, but it's helping to kind of scatter the light a little bit more. And it is kind of looking like we're adding light in these shadows a little bit more, okay? Now this is way too intense. I think something maybe more like around 1 would be good. Let's just kind of go with that for right now, and then we might kind of change these values around a little bit more. The other thing is I'm going to delete this light, and actually let's just delete all of these lights. Okay, so the only thing that we have is just the emissive intensity there. I'm going to just go ahead and get a rect light because I'm going to use that for these. Okay, and then we're going to bring that up, and let me actually just copy the location of that, and then I'll paste that to get my light in the exact spot. Then I want to just change the width and the height to kind of match the shape of this. So something kind of like about there. And then we need to change this to lumens, and let's go back to 800. Okay. So I think this is a little too bright, but let's actually look at our fog again, because we might just have too much fog in here. Let's go to 0.5, maybe 0.25. Okay. Yeah, so there's some things that I like about this. First of all, we're giving a lot more shape to the light here. And this just looks way better compared to this. Because, this looks like now we've got like this dark and dusty environment that has got this fog in here that's going to kind of help give us that shape. The other thing that, since we don't have lumen, or any global illumination. We're not getting any bounce lighting in the ceiling here. So there's a couple of ways that we could kind of change that or fake that. One way is to add a skylight. So if I add a skylight in here, and if we change our source type to a cube map, and then in our engine content, so if you don't see this engine content here, you need to just go to settings and enable engine content. But if you have that enabled, you can search for gray, and you can find something like this gray dark texture cube, or even the gray texture cube will work. And actually, I'm going to just hide this light for right now so that we can just see what's going on in our scene here. And then let me go back to our skylight. Okay, so what I want to show here is if we bring the intensity up to like 5, okay? We don't have any lights besides the skylight, and this skylight is kind of providing us with a little bit of, well, it's not bounce lighting, but it's kind of just giving us this fill light for our shadows, right? And that's kind of what I want here. So I think this is a little too much, maybe like 2, maybe 3. And you can play around with this. You can change the color as well. So like if you wanted this to be more blue or more orangey, yellowish, I kind of think like maybe something a little orange would look good for our shadows. Okay, so let's just look at that. If we turn our light back on, find that rect light. Okay, so if we turn the skylight off, it's quite subtle, but I can tell, like, look right here. We're definitely getting much more light in those shadows. The other thing that I think that we need, if we look at our main camera angle here, I do feel like we still need more light in the background here. So I'll copy both of these, even though you won't see these in the scene. Let's just put another light in here because you probably would have multiple lights like this, right? Okay, so that is already looking quite a bit better. Now, I think these are a little bright, so I'm going to bring these down to maybe like 600. Whoops, not 3. Let's try 600. Let's try 400. Yeah, I think 400 is pretty good. Okay. And now it's just kind of going back and forth between all of our different tools that we have here. So, going between our skylight, our lights, our fog, and just trying to find a balance of everything. Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to go ahead and do is, actually, before I do this, one other thing that I want to do, I still don't feel like I have enough fill light on the ceiling here. So I'm going to add a point light, and this is just going to be for fill light, so I don't need any shadows. That will save performance as well. And then I'm going to just copy the location of this light and paste that, and then just bring this down, and then we'll do something pretty low, like maybe 150. Oh, that's 250. 150. Okay, so yeah, that looks quite a bit better. And then we can also lower the attenuation radius quite a bit on this because we don't need a ton of that. So maybe like 400. Okay. And then if we just toggle that on and off, you can see that's making a pretty big difference there. And it's mostly just affecting the top up here. We could even just use a spotlight. In fact, let's actually do that. Let's just get a spotlight. So I think I still have the values saved in there for that location. So I'm just going to flip this upside down or facing upward. And really, I want to change this to lumens. Let's set it to 150. And then let's just change our cone angle to be basically almost all the way out like this. Okay. And again, the main reason that I'm doing that is because it's lighter on performance than a point light. We'll turn the shadows off. And I think that may even be a little too bright. So I'm going to try 100, 50. Yeah. Honestly, I think that looks pretty good there. So just a tiny amount of light, but it's just helping us light that ceiling, right? And the other thing that I want to do is specifically with that spotlight, I want to set the volumetric scattering intensity to 0 because it's not super noticeable now. But if I set this up high, you'll see that you can actually see the point of that light, and you probably could even see it if it is set to the default of 1. So I don't want any volumetric scattering coming from that, so I'm just going to set it to 0. Okay. Whereas these lights, I do want to have the scattering intensity. In fact, we may even want to increase it, but I think 1 is pretty good. I may play around a little bit with the angle here. Just kind of bring that down. Although with these lights, I do feel like there would be quite a bit of kind of light spreading out around. So I think that actually looks pretty good. Okay, now that I have this, I'm going to copy all of this, and we're going to move it over here. And actually, we'll just delete this guy. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my camera angle and let's just see kind of where we want that. And I think I may even make this light a little bit brighter. Let's go to 600. Just wanted to get back to my camera angle. Yeah, because I want this to kind of give us that feel like we're, wanting to figure out what's around the corner there. Okay, and then let's just see. We can probably lower our attenuation radius quite a bit, maybe like 500. Similar with this, let's go to 500. Okay, and then I'm just going to look at our fog again. And let's see if we go up a little bit higher. I think I do like it kind of around 0.5. And then if we just kind of toggle this on and off, you can just see how big of a difference that is making. And yeah, I am pretty happy with that. So I think we will leave it there, guys. There's a lot more that we could do. We could continue tweaking the light. We could probably get it a little bit better. I think overall it might still be a little too bright overall, but it's pretty close to what I wanted. If we go back to our scene here, personally, I like our scene better. It does look like, so one thing I notice here, it looks like this might be, I don't know if this is a screenshot from a game, but it does look like they're holding a flashlight. So, that is going to change the shape of the light a little bit, but I definitely like what we did in terms of filling out our scene and just making it look more, kind of messy. I like all the stuff that we scattered along here. And then I feel like our lighting has a little bit better shape, especially with the fog that we have going on here. And then I like this light around the corner here. I think it would be cool to have like a flickering light, going on around the corner to give us even more kind of mystery and make us want to go and figure out what is going on back there. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with the result that we got. I know this was a lot. It took a while for us to get there, but that's just part of the process. So, Not everybody wants to take the time to make an environment like this, and that's okay. But I really enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoyed the process. And if you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to leave them below. And I really appreciate your support. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day or night, and I will see you all next time. Take care, guys.